After being on Zepbound for almost 6 months last year, I stopped taking it for what ended up being 7 weeks. And in today's video, I wanted to go over those weeks in more detail and talk about why I stopped taking the medication and what ultimately made me decide to go back on it. But beyond that, I thought that it would be good to include my mom's experience as well. So originally I was just gonna film this video talking about my experience, but she has been on Zepbound as well, and for longer than I have. And she also stopped last summer. And we have different reasons for why we stopped and different experiences throughout that time that we were off the medication. So I thought it would be valuable to go through both of our experiences and share those with you. And we had a little phone interview that I did with her to make sure I have the information correct. Before I go into the details of each of our experiences, I thought I would start with our stats. I am soon to be 47 years old. I am 5 foot 7 inches tall, and my starting weight was 259.4 when I started in early February of 2025. When I started, I had also been in the pre-diabetic range for a few years, about 3 years, I believe. My A1C was in that pre-diabetic range every year on my blood tests. And my mom, in contrast, she is turning 70 this year. She's about 5 foot 4 inches, and she was in the obese category as well. I don't have her weight since not everyone wants to share their weight on the internet. And both of us have struggled with our weight for most of our lives. I have been on Zepbound from Lilly Direct since the beginning of my journey. So the vials that you can get directly through Eli Lilly. It's great for people like me whose insurance does not cover the medication. And my mom had started on compounded Tirzepatide through a med spa, I think it's called. So that brings us to the differences in our reasons for quitting the medication. In my case, I had been on Zepbound since early February, so I had been on the medication for almost 6 months. It had titrated up to 5 milligrams after being on 2.5 for 5 months, I believe. I experienced some pretty harsh side effects. Could have been a virus, but if so, it would have been probably one of the most strange viruses I've ever had, because I had severe chills. I was sitting outside in the middle of the summer with a sweatshirt on, just shivering. I had brain fog, body aches. I did have a low fever even, and I had no appetite. And that started after my 3rd injection of the 5 milligram. And from a little research I did, it does take a while for the new dose to build up in your system. So after 3 weeks, that would make sense. Maybe that it was the medication causing those side effects. But I missed a few days of work, and I was just honestly too afraid to do the 4th injection of 5 milligrams because I didn't want to use more sick time from work. I didn't want the side effects to get worse. I decided on my own I wasn't going to do that 4th injection. Continued to track my food periodically through the 7 weeks I was off of Zepbound, and I also weighed myself, not every single week, but I'll show you. I keep a spreadsheet of my weight and have since the beginning of my journey, and so I'll show you the spreadsheet. And I was lucky in that I didn't gain a lot of weight in those 7 weeks that I was off the medication, but in looking at my tracking using MyFitnessPal, it's kind of interesting now looking back at it that I feel like it's even more clear to me what was happening. That is that my food noise was getting stronger and stronger, and my appetite was increasing. So I'll show you an example of one of the days I tracked last summer when I was off of Zepbound. And so my calorie count was going up to 2,000 calories or more a day on some days, and I was starting to crave foods that were obviously not ideal. There was a lot more fast food creeping into my diet. And I specifically remember one day driving home from work, and I drive by a Whole Foods, and I just had a really strong craving for ice cream and stopped and got ice cream at Whole Foods. And I remember thinking in that moment, I really need to start back up on the medication because the cravings were just getting worse and I was just starting to eat more and more. I don't think my plan was ever to be off the medication completely because I hadn't reached my goal weight yet. My goal is to lose 100 pounds in total, and at that point, I hadn't lost 30 pounds yet. So I knew I wanted to lose more weight in just a matter of working up the courage to get started on it again. And coincidentally, that's when I started my channel here. I was feeling like I needed more support and just feeling kind of afraid to start the medication again. Thank you everyone who's watched and commented and supported each other. It's a great community here on YouTube, and I'm really happy to be a part of it. Overall, I was lucky in that I gained less than 3 pounds in that entire 7 weeks that I was off the medication. Trying to still track food, trying to be mindful of the calories I was eating each day, but obviously those calories were creeping up week by week. I do work as a horticulturist, so I was still getting more activity in my day at that time during the summertime, so that probably helped as well. For my mom, after talking with her about her experience, she said that she felt more hungry, but she was still eating healthy foods. She was just noticing that it was taking more of those foods to make her feel full. Her reason for stopping compounded Tirzepatide was more of a cost issue. She was going through a med spa in her area, and as the dosage goes up, the cost goes up, which is true for Lily Direct as well, but not quite by the same amount. She said she was paying $800 a month by the time that she quit, and she was on a higher dose. I believe she was on 15 milligrams at that point. And along with the cost was the fact that she wasn't barely losing any weight each month anymore. So she was losing maybe a pound a month and just feeling like she was throwing that money away. It wasn't worth it at that point. So she decided to stop to take a break, and her intention as well was to restart and get to her goal weight. At that point, she had lost about 55 pounds before she stopped. She wanted to get up to 70 pounds lost, the advice of her doctor. She does have scoliosis, and she has a back brace that she has to wear a lot of times for her spine, and the doctor had told her that if she could lose that amount of weight, it would help greatly. Unfortunately, when she was off the medication for 3 months, she ended up gaining 20 pounds. We both restarted on 2.5 milligrams, which is what is advised. If you start at a higher dose when you've been off the medication for 2 weeks or more, your side effects are likely to be a lot worse. So you need to get your body used to the medication again. So we both started back on 2.5 milligrams, and my mom switched to Eli Lilly Direct as well. So starting out at $2.99 a month. So there's a big savings there from what she was paying. And then we both moved up to 5 milligrams after a month, and then she moved up to 7.5 before I did. I stayed on 5 milligrams for 3 months. I did stay on it longer than I should have, but hindsight is 20/20 with all of this. Hopefully by sharing it with all of you, help you with your own weight loss journeys as well. We both are currently on 7.5 milligrams, and I have thankfully lost another 16 pounds so far. So I restarted last fall, around the time I started this channel, and my mom restarted in mid-September. So in that time, she's lost 15 of the 20 pounds that she gained. So she's still working on losing the last 5 pounds of what she gained in the 3 months that she was off the medication. So with all that being said, we are both back on Zepbound. We are both doing well on 7.5, I would say. My mom said that that was the dose that she finally was feeling appetite suppression again and feeling like it was working again. And for me, definitely been an improvement over the 5 milligrams. I definitely should have titrated up a little sooner. I was not losing much in that last month on 5 milligrams. I think I basically was the same weight from December 10th or so all the way until about a week ago. When I asked my mom, she said that what she would do differently is that she wouldn't have stopped Tirzepatide completely. She would have gone down to a lower dose and stayed on that, and probably then switched to Eli Lilly Direct. But she really regrets stopping it completely. And in my case, I would say probably the same. I think I should have titrated down to 2.5 milligrams when I was having those side effects, and just gone back on 2.5 for a month, and then used the method that I now use when I titrate up, which is to take a smaller amount out of the vial of that stronger dose when I'm titrating up. So when I went up to 5 milligrams this last fall, I took a smaller amount out of the vial for that first injection, and I inject it into my thigh, which has given me fewer side effects in the past. So now I have a method that I use that helps me when titrating up. If I could go back in time, I would have done that. I would have gone down to 2.5 and then slowly titrated up to 5 milligrams. I hope that our experience can help you, and this doesn't by any means mean that you won't be able to come off the medication in the future. The majority of people, research has shown, will gain the weight back, and sometimes more rapidly. That doesn't mean that that's the case for everyone. There are a small percentage of people in the trials or in the research that did not gain the weight back. They were able to maintain their weight loss. So I don't want this to discourage anyone who is hoping to come off the medication someday. But for me personally and for my mom, we both plan to stay on this medication basically for life. But there's new options coming out as well, so who knows what the future holds. Maybe it'll be a pill we take every day or once a week, or who knows in the future. But we both feel that we have the disease of obesity and that it's something that will need to be managed like any other disease of medication. And I should have mentioned it earlier, but I am not a doctor and I have no medical training, so this is just my personal experience and the experience that my mom has shared with me through her journey. So don't take any of this advice as medical advice, and definitely talk to your own doctor when deciding to titrate up or down or to make any changes to any medications that you're taking. And today I was just reading the article in the latest People magazine about Oprah's journey, and there's a new book out written by Dr. Anya Jastreboff. I'm sure I butchered that name and I apologize, but she's a leading Yale endocrinologist and top researcher on obesity. And seeing her in the interview on Oprah's special back in, I think it was 2023, that was what convinced me. After I still took time to think about it after seeing the special, but ultimately that's what convinced me to start Zepbound in the first place. And just her empathy for people who are experiencing this disease and who have lived with it for most of their lives. And especially Oprah is a great example of that, and such a brave person for, living that for everyone to see and critique, and I can't even imagine. I hope that sharing our experiences helps you in your own journeys, and probably the takeaway message I would say is you shouldn't feel like you have failed if you try to come off the medication and gained weight. That's what happens to the vast majority of people who have tried to come off of Zepbound. And there's no shame in treating a disease like any other disease you might have. I have endometriosis. I have medication I take every day for that. And so there's no shame in that. That's what allows me to live my best life. So that's the message I want you to take away from this video. And until next time, let's keep moving forward together. Take care, friends.